It was the recession we almost had to have. The Hunter recorded 5 consecutive quarters of negative growth, 6 the definition of recession. At 10 minutes to midnight, Newcastle and the Hunter has pulled an economic rabbit out of the hat, the only region in the state to stabilise its economic activity in the manufacturing sector.
While other areas of the state are still in decline in terms of their production and their orders and their sales, the Hunter is shown to have stabilised over the last quarter.
In the March quarter, 28% of businesses recorded better performances, and they're even more optimistic about the future, with 1/3 of firms expecting improved conditions through the June period. The employment indicators are also looking good, with an across-the-board prediction of a 3.6% increase. Analysts say the recent change of federal government is partly responsible for the optimism, but that there are also more lasting causes.
We've seen some very important contracts come into the Hunter, and I think that is helping our overall situation. That, together with our export capacity of our small to medium companies who are now coming into their own.
But while things definitely are on the improve, the sting in the tail is that profits haven't increased along with productivity. That means manufacturers are working harder for the same money.
While the established teams like Cronulla and Brisbane will now get on with the game, the 2 teams especially created for the Super League, the Hunter Mariners and Adelaide Rams, are now out in the cold.
Well, I've had tougher weeks, but I can't remember when it was. I think it was getting sacked at Illawarra.
Mariners players are now on the league overflow list, 40 footballers hoping to make a team. Super League will pay their wages while they play in the ARL competition. And while it basically means the players are free of charge, the Knights are only interested in 4 of the Rebels.
We've been trying to contact a number of players and we have had unofficial discussions with them, but nothing official yet.
Those players are thought to be Robbie Ross, Brad Godden, Iro and one other player. Mark Sargent and Robbie McCormack are not on that list. Coach Malcolm Reilly saying there is no room for sentiment. There is a chance that some of the Mariners may now end up in the local Newcastle competition. Local clubs are already contacting players in the hope of picking up some stars. Robbie McCormack says he is prepared to play in the local competition but is keeping his options open. Meanwhile, the Newcastle Wildfires rugby union team is keen to talk to the former union internationals that joined the Mariners. Peter Ryan, NBN News. Even at work, Ralph Mayer, a PE teacher, is swamped by fans, but it's out on the field he's most admired. It was September 1991 and Mayer played in the first Breakers game, a real honour for the local boy born and bred.
It was a great experience for me, obviously to see National League soccer back in Newcastle, being a part of that. Unfortunately we got beat 2-0, but yeah, that memory will always live with me for sure.
Mayer was a shining light in the Australian youth team in the early 80s, but in Newcastle his rugged defence and never say die attitude have been his hallmarks. No other player has played 100 games for the Breakers. Meanwhile, Newcastle renew their rivalry with the Melbourne Knights on Friday night at Breakers Stadium. The last time these 2 teams met, no less than 7 players ended up before the judiciary.
They're on a high at the moment. They're doing very well. They're very consistent. They're the past champions. But at home, I fancy us. We play well at home. We're confident at home. And hopefully if we can keep all 11 players on the grounds, we'll do well.
For those not familiar with such things, a quick recap. It's where a tiny piece of electronics is implanted painlessly and permanently in the animal's skin. 7-year-old golden retriever Gypsy didn't even flinch. If she slips her collar, then she could still be identified and returned to her owner. Today's development is that the RSPCA at Wallsend now has a $5,000 floor-mounted reader to identify animals easier, particularly the angry ones, without putting staff at risk.
The big news is, as far as in looking at cats and cat control, dangerous or difficult to handle cats can now simply be put in a cage and walk past the reader without them having to be physically handled. Easier on the cat, easier on their handler.
Implants can be arranged through any veterinary clinic for a once-only cost of just $70. So it's surprising that so few farmers or pet owners take up the idea. But could it be something councils and even the Agriculture Department make compulsory?
There's a lot of positives that come from ID in a permanent way, and I think it's really up to the communities to assess how far they wish to travel with these technologies. Certainly the good news stories is that animals across Australia are being recovered 24 hours a day based on microchip implants.
Now, say you took your dog to the supermarket,
Every day, Beryl Rimmer visits her granddaughter Vicky, who's been in a coma for 2 years.
Your doggy, she's getting fat because she's waiting for you to take her for a walk.
Beryl asked us to film Vicky because she's convinced her granddaughter was struck down as a result of eating beef. Though not confirmed as CJD, Vicky's illness fits the pattern scientists have identified as a new strain of the disease, probably linked to BSE.
I would tell them not to trust the government by saying beef is safe.
The CJD surveillance unit in Edinburgh is where the new strain was identified. This morning they allowed ITN cameras into the unit to show us their evidence for the new strain. This is what a brain damaged by CJD looks like under the microscope. And this is the much greater damage caused by the new strain. Only today the government's chief medical officer spelt it out to a parliamentary select committee.
It is an agent which is new to us. It is a protein. Its exact mode of action is not entirely clear. But as an infective agent, I think that's the issue that really matters. It is something which does transmit disease from one animal to another.
A lot of the advice we're giving is judgment, really, based on our knowledge of these diseases in other animals, but it's very, very difficult, impossible to be absolutely precise about what the risk is to humans.
Some of the concerns over the power industry reshuffle will ease following today's announcement by Energy Australia of a major reduction in electricity costs for its 135,000 business customers. The cuts follow productivity increases within the distribution network, with more likely as Energy Australia positions itself to enter the national retail market for electricity.
This is all about getting the price levels right to enter that market, and for Energy Australia to be one of the most competitive companies in that market.
Energy Australia's business customers can expect their power bills to drop by at least 5.5%. Medium-sized businesses, like Newcastle's Western Suburbs Leagues Club, will enjoy the biggest windfall. their bills set to reduce by an average 8.5%.
When people like Energy Australia go out there and cut the cost of doing business, it's a fantastic asset for us, it's a fantastic gain. It allows us now to employ more people.
Domestic tariffs remain frozen, at least until a review of charges is completed later this year. Meanwhile, relief of sorts for ratepayers in Lake Macquarie. Council almost certain now to drop plans for a rate increase to fund the purchase of foreshore land for open space.
The community has basically said to us, let's get some of the basics right first. Let's get some more roads, tar soiled, some more curbing and guttering in, some more footpaths, and then we'll look at building some of those other things that we've been talking about.
Council says it will fall back on loan funds to continue its land acquisition program. The launch of the QuickLink smart card in Newcastle was tipped by some as the beginning of the end for cash in Australia. Like a phone card that can be topped up, it's ready money, although the trial so far shows consumers are still to be convinced they need an alternative for cash.
What they may become accustomed to is a more convenient payment mechanism, and that's what we're delivering.
But smart cards are the tip of the iceberg if today's electronic cash conference at Newcastle University is anything to go by. The internet is being developed as a marketplace, with shoppers using digital money.
Digital cash in conjunction with computer networks and things like electronic wallets will allow people to buy things locally and across the internet and around the world, basically, within a flash of a second.
Singapore aims at being a cashless society by the year 2000, so it's not science fiction. As Australians increasingly welcome computers into their homes, the range of purchasing options will be dazzling.
You can have smart card readers that link to internet payments. You can use your smart card to pay from your friend's computer once those systems are in place. And once it is attractive to users, as this scenario would imply, then those systems are more likely to be accepted.
There are still plenty of questions about the new money chain, with privacy, tax and legal hurdles still to be overcome. But in the same way we've embraced automatic bank tellers, the experts are confident we'll find electronic money easy to spend. In their last game, the Breakers and the Knights produced plenty of fireworks, a total of 7 players ending up before the judiciary. Club officials hope tomorrow night's clash will be a little less fiery, although the Breakers say they won't be pulling back. It's been an exhausting month for the Newcastle side, playing 9 games in March, but they're ready.
Players looking forward to tomorrow night's fixture. It's our captain's 100th game, first player to do it, so obviously there'll probably be a little bit more effort than the 200% that's normally required to get the 3 points.
The Breakers' leading marksmen, Jason Bennett and Peter Ritchie, are both back in the side after returning from injury. Coach John Kosmina naming a 15-man squad. With a 2 out of 3 win rate at home for March, the Breakers are quietly confident they can turn the tables on their Melbourne rivals.
"70-year-old Dawn Coventry is a remarkable woman. At her nursery south of Newcastle, she sells plants for $2 to raise money for orphans. But watching the revelations of the Royal Commission this week has been a painful reminder of her time as a state ward.
I'm so glad now that children have a phone in, or they are encouraged to tell other people that people are being brought to trial and justice.
Dawn was placed into foster care during the 1920s. As a 6-year-old, she was abused by a teacher and in her teenage years sexually assaulted by her foster father. At 19, she fled the West Australian farm where she grew up after she fell pregnant to another man who raped her. But Dawn believes her experiences as a state ward are not unique.
I am only one of thousands and thousands who have been through what I have been through.
And like other wards, she also knows the feeling of not being believed by authorities. She did seek help from the police, but nothing was done.
I would say in the main, the perpetrators of this have got away with it. But what they leave behind, and I can speak only for myself at my age, it's a thing that you can't rub out of your mind.
It's only in recent years that Dawn has been able to come to terms with what happened. She went back to school, gained a degree and wrote about her life. By helping others, Dawn believes she can go some way to erasing the past.
While I still have health and strength, I want to in return do something for somebody else. That's my survival kit.
"52-year-old John Temple has achieved more than many people even dream about in a lifetime. Born with cerebral palsy, Mr Temple has overcome major hurdles to become a valuable and productive member of society. For 37 years of his life, he has worked hard driving trucks, forklifts and front-end loaders. He has built his own house and in 1987 was awarded an Order of Australia medal for his work with the disabled. But now one of the most honoured residents in the Menning is having trouble finding work. Mr Temple returned to Old Bar from Sydney 18 months ago to nurse his terminally ill mother who died last year. He says all he wants now is a job as a driver to regain his sense of dignity and independence like anyone else.
The hordes of inquisitive browsers at Newcastle's newest shopping centre are concerned with little more than picking up a bargain. But the supercenter's management is dealing with some opening week teething problems. Already the Stockland Trust Group has received a $500,000 repair bill for the centre's main entrance road. Council has demanded the road be rebuilt after tests showed the compacted gravel under its seal is substandard.
If it's not reconstructed, our engineers are saying that it will fail in about 3 to 5 years.
It'll actually fall apart?
Yeah, the road pavement will break up and yes, the road will fall apart.
Another thorn in the slick new operations side is a looming tussle with local businesses over Sunday trading. Small business groups have already joined forces to oppose the granting of licences. The supercentre is in competition with a number of smaller shopping malls in neighbouring suburbs, which say Sunday trading would put the squeeze on them.
And a lot of us like to shop on Sundays, no doubt about that, but we believe that the area is well serviced already for Sunday trading.
Yet another controversy is over a childcare facility originally planned for the centre. It's now going to be built and run by council on adjacent Crown land, with construction costs partly funded by a $365,000 payment from Stockland. Laura Saperstein, NBN News.
There are new roadside signs leading the way to one of the region's busiest holiday spots. But rather than the area's attractions, they're there to remind drivers of the traffic casualty count.
Easter time's a very concerning time as far as the number of crashes that are occurring on our roads in Port Stephens.
The council recognises it has some difficult and dangerous roads at the best of times.
As well as us trying to improve the roads, we're finding that whatever the conditions of the roads, we want the drivers to drive to those conditions, and that means speed and alcohol are still two of the biggest contributors to causing road accidents, along with fatigue.
Pubs and clubs have joined the road safety push too, running a designated driver plan where a non-drinking driver is served free soft drink. On loan from the RTA, an alkaliser is doing the rounds as well, offering patrons a free breath test before they get behind the wheel.
It's an educational tool, it's not a police piece of equipment, so the responsibility is still on the driver.
As the metal shell of crowded car parks closes around the university, there's one small patch of native bushland within the heart of the campus that should remain intact.
There won't be any more roads or any more buildings, one hopes, ever put on this particular piece of land. We've got it here not only for the enjoyment and recreation of people, but here for scientific study too.
Known as Kevin's Cathedral, an area set aside as a nature reserve was today dedicated to Kevin MacDonald, the former course director of the Environment Assessment Management Program and campus conservationist. The site is marked with a special seat for environmental inspiration.
Too many universities tend to clutter up their grounds with neatly mown grass and pine trees from other lands to sort of emulate dear old Oxford and Cambridge. But, I mean, why shouldn't we be proud as Australians to celebrate our own flora and our own fauna? And here we have it, a nice slice of Australian bushland, here forever.
Amid celebrations of colleagues and students, the seat of environmental inspiration was, for today at least, the most popular in the House. Andrew Lobb, NBN News.
The Newcastle representative rugby union side went through its final paces at training last night in preparation for the Country Week competition. The annual tournament, called the Cold World Cup, starts Friday and is to be held over the Easter weekend in Bathurst. Sure hands and quick feet will be needed during the knockout competition, with the Newcastle Rebs needing to win at least 3 games over the weekend to reach the final. With the local boys taking on the tough Central Coast outfit in their first game, they still appear confident they will get through. This is John Wadasha, NBN News.
Something strange happens to people around boats, particularly steamboats. Up and down the lake they go, toots of every pitch and volume, screeching out a language all of their own. But it's more than just the lure of the ocean and the bellow of a steam whistle. It's also nostalgia, a reminder of ye olde world charm that once graced our harbours. At the turn of the century, boats like the Lady K would have been a gentleman's pleasure launch, parading its high society passengers by less fortunate crowds left to stroll the boardwalks.
For the ladies to be dressed up in their crinoline and lace and all the rest of it and try and keep clean from the coal and the dirt and the soot in those days.
More modest craft ferried workmen to and from their daily toils. The charm of the steamboats will be just part of the regalia gracing Toronto Bay for the first Heritage Boat Festival this weekend.
Boats from 15 foot, a steamboat about 15 foot long, all pleasure boats, all types, old converted trawlers to pleasure vessels and boats up to about 50 feet.
And the boats won't be the only piece of history. Visitors are sure to spy plenty of replicas of that famous character, the Old Man and the Sea. Laura Saperstein, NBN News.
Good Friday and a feast on hot cross buns washed down with a cool can of ginger beer. But this is not your usual Aussie fare. This is a tradition dating back 91 years when Worth's Circus treated young orphans and needy children to a good feed.
They'd distribute hot cross buns and ginger beer, first of all to the children, and then they'd present about an hour's circus program.
Worth's Circus closed down in 1963, but the Circus Fans Association of Australasia has carried on with the idea. The association is in Newcastle for its 2-yearly meeting.
Well, we're people who have a passionate interest in watching the circus, enjoying the circus, but these days there's something more serious because we've got to defend the circus.
Their greatest threat is the attack from animal liberationists. The circus fans have travelled from interstate and New Zealand for 3 days of talks on what's happening under the big top. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Fire crews could only salvage a few armloads of sporting equipment after the storage shed caught alight at Edgeworth Public School at about 8 last night. The fire caused more than $10,000 in damage, and it could have been much worse if the building hadn't been set apart from the rest of the school.
Oh, it is a concern that we have fires, but unfortunately it's part of life these days, and we take measures to try and stop these things, but with the best will in the world there's going to be events.
Another one of those events had occurred less than 48 hours earlier. The Belmont Primary School destroyed by another deliberately lit fire. The damage bill will exceed $4 million, with building workers trying to get the school ready for the start of the second term in just under a fortnight. Despite the rising cost and inconvenience, the Education Department says it can do little more to improve security.
Some schools have got monitored alarms where it rings back to base. Other schools we use roving patrol guards. And we also, the one that's really important is the community itself as watchdogs of schools. We'd have to put Berlin walls around the whole of schools, and that's not a good learning environment.
Investigations are continuing into both blazes. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
The injury-plagued front rower was to make his first run-on appearance for Newcastle this season, but that's now in doubt as Harrigan struggles to overcome a groin complaint. Team management said this morning the chief will be given till tomorrow's final training session to prove his fitness. Also nursing wounded bodies tonight, many of those who took part in the Lake Macquarie Yacht Club's 3 points race. This year, 3 runs were added to the course for the first time, with some desperates going to any measures. And surprisingly, it worked. The crew of Backchat combining running, rowing and sailing to take out the event. Amazingly, they negotiated the 2 other stops and 3-kilometre runs to beat Wizard of Oz and Adamant across the line. Coach John Cosmina said he was happy with the 1-0 away result, the Breakers defending doggedly throughout to keep themselves in the match. Neither side was able to find the back of the net till the 73rd minute when Fijian Asala Masai broke the deadlock from just outside the box. Newcastle's opponents tomorrow night, Adelaide City, had a 1-0 draw with Brisbane, while Wollongong has edged ahead of the Breakers on the A-League table after a lucky scoreless draw with Marconi. And it seems goals were hard to come by this weekend with a Super League match between Adamstown and Sutherland deadlocked till the final minutes. The Sydney Siders scoring at the death for a 1-0 victory. In local matches this afternoon, Western beat Maitland, while Cessnock and West Wallsend had a draw. Played on the rock-solid Oaks Oval in Lismore, many players came off second best in a hectic weekend of rugby league. Less than 24 hours after qualifying for the Northern Final, both Newcastle and the Central Coast were back on deck for the decider. Newcastle overcame a determined coast outfit and 33-degree heat to qualify for the country championships with a 30-16 victory. But the weekend's wins came at a cost, the most serious injury to Toronto lock Peter Ridings. The rising star broke his arm and will be sidelined for several weeks. Tony Hutton and captain Trevor Crowe, playing in his 25th game for Newcastle, were both concussed, while Paul Izzard also sustained a leg injury. Newcastle's opponents will be decided this weekend when the Southern Zone plays its championships. The NRL is hopeful of getting the final to Newcastle, ideally played under lights at number 1 Sports Ground in a fortnight's time. The greenkeeper at his home club of Western Creek in the ACT, Willis was 24-18 behind Gil Steinhardt in this morning's decider. But the 22-year-old showed great maturity to catch and overhaul Steinhardt for a 31-28 victory. The previous youngest winner was Australian representative Kelvin Kirko in 1992. In tennis, Newcastle's Richard Nichols has taken a hat-trick of titles at Tamworth's Open over Easter. The country champ was an easy winner in the singles, then took out the men's and mixed doubles. The State Taser Championships concluded today off Point Wollstonecraft on Lake Macquarie. Around 60 boats took part, with Sydney's Stuart Scheimeld and Jude Kennedy from Canberra winning the series. In rugby union, 5 Newcastle players will take part in a country possibles-probables match at Muswellbrook this weekend. The two sides were announced following Country Week in Bathurst, with Singleton Steve Merrick to sit out the match through injury. And in soccer played this afternoon, round 3 of the NBN Northern New South Wales League was completed with Hamilton taking on the Eagles. Hamilton convincing winners 2-0.